And on the Newsmaker hotline at this very instant, we have Representative Mike Rogers, who is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Brian, Larry, it's great to be on.
All right, this Mandiant report firm in Northern Virginia came out this week, and it sent tremors through official Washington about the depth and the sophistication of the Chinese military's cyber hacking operation. What did you think about the report, and what should we do about it?
Yeah, well, I would only correct one thing, Brian. It sent shivers through unofficial Washington. We have been aware of this problem for years and trying to make some hay on trying to deal with it. It has been exponentially worse since I was first briefed on this back in about 2004 as a young member of the Intelligence Committee about a problem we should be watching and trying to deal with. And it has gotten exponentially worse. And we're in a cyber war, and we're losing. And what we need to do is several levels. One, we need to make sure that we can protect our own networks, both government and private sector. And when I say protect those networks, 95% of the networks in the United States are private sector run. We need to empower them with the right kind of information. So the government should share classified information about the threats that we know, the government knows, are out there so that they can protect their own servers. Number one. And number two, we need to directly start dealing with China on a bilateral relationship when it comes to cyber, and it ought to be the first, second, and third priority.
So what are they probing? What are they trying to learn about us?
Well, they have been stealing intellectual property at a breathtaking pace. One American manufacturing company, and we're very well known, lost some intellectual property, so the Chinese came in, got on their private class of their own sensitive networks, stole intellectual property, the blueprints, if you will, went back to China, and now are competing against that company with something oddly that looks very similar to that particular product. That company believes they've lost about 25,000 manufacturing jobs here in the United States. That's one company, one incident. It happens hundreds and thousands of times a day where the Chinese are coming in, trying to steal intellectual property, the value of your company, take it back to China, give it to their version of their private sector, which are really Chinese-run companies, to compete against American companies. We've never seen anything like this in history, and it is high time we stop admiring the problem and start doing something about it.
Representative Mike Rogers is our guest. He, of course, represents the 8th Congressional District in Michigan, which, claim to fame, my grandparents lived in that district, Howell Lake, Congressman.
Oh, well,
just
fantastic.
So you know.
Yeah, I graduated from Howell High School.
There it is.
I'm tearing up just talking.
I'm tearing up every time I see the White House stonewall on Benghazi. Lindsey Graham over in the Senate has sort of taken the lead. You're the chairman of the Intel Committee. What are you doing to get more answers? The White House claims all the questions have been answered. Do you agree?
Well, my lane of the road here is on the intelligence side. So what we've done is requested a whole host of documents, and there was one little tranche left that I believe was because of the holdup of Hagel is now coming, that both Armed Services and the Foreign Affairs and the Intelligence Committee were asking for. So that was the last piece. I'm reviewing the 4,000-some documents. But what I can tell you on this, Larry, is from my perspective of my review of the materials that we have in the Intelligence Committee, this was not an intelligence problem. Plenty of threat information to know that you don't reduce your security posture at that particular location. We also know that they were trying to merge all the government agencies in the area on that particular compound in August of before September the attack. And the other agencies said, not on your life, this place is a death trap.
Yeah.
And so we know clearly that this was a colossal that led to the 4 deaths, or at least contributed on behalf of the State Department. And that's where we're having the hardest time. It's a little out of my lane as the intelligence chairman, but that's where the problem was. That's where the decisions were made. And I think you're going to find that some of those decisions were based on what they wanted the situation to be and not what the reality on the ground was.
Representative Rogers, we've talked this morning about the sequestration cuts, and I'm curious, since the House holds the purse strings, we've been getting reports that people at the Pentagon and in the Defense Department, they identified, this 20% cut they're supposed to do. They identified programs that can be cut, and the hierarchy at the Pentagon said, no, we're not going to cut programs, we're cutting people. And that seems to be a political move because, nobody wants to fire anybody because then you're hurting people's paycheck. Can't the House prioritize where these cuts come from the sequestration? So if it happens, you can't let the White House demagogue it and say, oh, you're throwing people out on the street.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things I think are important to get clear on this. So most of that 85 some billion dollars comes out of the Defense Department. And the way they did it is they did it by the meat cleaver. So they just said you have to take this percent across all your programs. So I have argued, and I think you're going to find the House stepping up here very soon, and saying, no, you don't have to take. That would be a bad way to cut. You want to make smart cuts. You want to make cuts where you can keep the carrier group moving to the Mediterranean, but find other programs that need to be trimmed or should be trimmed. And so we're going to try to give them that ability. It would take the president's ability to run around the country and say, we're going to cut meat inspectors. And no, you don't have to do that. If you want to do that, Mr. President, you can do it, but that's not where we think you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And the problem is it's condensed over a year's worth of cuts in 7 months. That's traumatic on any organization. It doesn't mean it can't happen if we do this correctly. And the reason we're here is the president just absolutely refuses to deal with the fact that he spends way too much money. This isn't a revenue problem, it's a spending problem.
We just had some kind of problem there with your phone. Are you still there?
I am.
You sound like you're coming from Mars. Maybe we better to reestablish that. Well, actually, our time is pretty much up anyway. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sorry about that little phone problem we had there at the end.
I think the Chinese hackers may have gotten us.
It quite very well have. Either that or he had a little helium right there at that break. That's wild.
That's the weirdest thing.
We got to send that audio to the congressman's office because the staffers will have a blast with that. All right, Representative, right? You know why? He's very excited about the prospects of a Michigan versus Michigan State NCAA championship. That's how the brackets are going to come.
All right. Well, listen, thank you again. Congressman Mike Rogers, chairman of the House Intelligence